Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode number 52 of Confessions of a Market Maker. I'm your co-host, Ray, aka All Day Ray, aka Ninja Turtle Cabs, and I'm joined here by my preeminent co-host, former market maker of 20 years and current day retail trader, a man who got too deep into the game, so like James Harden, he had to take a step back. He's leading more noble pursuit now, enlightening retail traders on the true nature of the shark-infested waters as they're dipping their toes in. I am talking about the Sri Lankan Rick Ross. JJ, how's it going?
Brother, how you doing? Good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good as usual. And our guest today, she's a rising star in the investment banking arena, a woman who works in asset management for the DWS Group, which is one of the world's leading asset managers with 700 billion under assets under management, former D1 athlete, and a beer, wine, and cocktail connoisseur, aka Dead Cat Bounce. I'm talking about Caityln Cook. Caityln, how's it going?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good. Yes, our pleasure. Caityln, we both had the pleasure of hosting a segment for the Stock Twitch Chip for Charity poker tournament. A lot of the hosts seem to know you very well. I was fortunate to be invited by Troy Prince, but I don't think anyone else really knew me as a young person in finance. How did you come to network with a lot of these esteemed people?
Well, I am a huge networker. I am very outgoing for sure, which definitely helps, but also very big into the social media, Twitter especially. Had a finance professor in college that I worked with pretty closely let me know about, fin twit or finance Twitter, as people call it. And I just, in the past few years since then and working, I live in Chicago now, moved here for my job, have gotten the opportunity to meet a lot of people through Twitter. And it's just kind of been snowballing from there. So I've made a lot of really good connections, just, interacting online and then eventually getting to meet in person and, in non-COVID times, which has been really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's a humongous skill to have. Is that something that's always come natural to you? Is it something that you've developed over the years?
It's definitely something that's come natural to me. I was always that kid in class that maybe talked a little bit too much or was always, making new friends. And I played a lot of sports and did a lot of traveling for that, met a lot of new people along the way. So I do think that just my upbringing generally sort of, it catered to someone that had the ability to make new connections pretty quickly with people. So I do think that was probably a big part of it, but I do think it came naturally as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's good. You're putting it to good effect. Because I felt, I was telling you before, I felt, I don't want to say like out of place, but like nobody, like I'm a former poker player, like none of these people knew me, and we were all, we were actually on the stream together, and like if they seem to know you a little bit more, and I'm like, how did like. She's in there. She's doing her thing. So that was awesome to see. Kat, you were a D1 athlete. What was it? Soccer?
It was. So yeah, I was recruited for soccer. I think I played maybe 3 or 4 weeks. Not an injury or anything necessarily. Just made a pretty big decision on whether I wanted to play or not. Just a real big time commitment. Decided I could be using my time in much better ways, and was pretty passionate about finance and getting serious about my degree and finishing school early too. So one of the best decisions I've ever made, a really tough one. I played soccer from literally the time that I could walk. I had 2 older siblings that were multi-sport athletes, so my parents got me right into it. And getting recruited was a big deal. I was excited about it, but when it came down to it, I just made the decision to go without. So brought me in a different track too. So I don't know if I would be doing necessarily the same things that I'm doing right now if I hadn't made that choice.
Right, for sure. I have this theory that ex-athletes, I'd never played at like a D1 level, but I grew up playing sports. I'm still am active. And I have this theory that trading or just finance in general, it's still a good outlet for that competitive drive and still compete as an adult, away from the field. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. I think it's just so competitive in nature generally. And especially when you get into, I feel like trading specifically, it's sort of like a chase or a challenge. Every day there's something new that you could be going after, and it's very dynamic. So I think that having that background and, being competitive as an athlete beforehand kind of prepares you for how to handle that.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And just a reminder to the listeners that if you guys would like to trade alongside JJ, myself, and a supportive community of traders, we're trading futures, equities, and options. Join us at microefutures.com. So, Caityln, when did you know you wanted to get into finance?
So probably towards the end of high school, I knew that I had wanted to do something in business. I had an aunt that works as a financial advisor, so got a little bit of exposure to the industry through her. I kind of peeked a little bit into the other parts of business, accounting, marketing, and hated accounting. Knew that wasn't going to work. I was good at math, but it's just I feel like accounting is very black and white, and that wasn't really how my mind worked. I knew immediately in my first accounting class that was never like a career that I would go after. Marketing, definitely a little bit more interesting. Never took an actual finance class in high school, but just from a lot of conversations I had had and sort of talking with my aunt and learning a bit about it that way, I took the jump and decided to choose that as my major and figured I could always switch if I didn't end up liking it. But I think what really got me was the sort of cornerstone where networking and having that relationship management side meets with the sort of more quantitative and math ability too, was probably what stemmed my interest first.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I saw you, it's probably a couple of days ago, you posted that you won a contest back in college. It was like a college course. You won some finance contest that exempted you from the exam. And, I was thinking on that, studying and like reading books and stuff, like there's people, that's how they first like found their like love for finance. What type of like impact did that have on you?
I think I had great professors in college, which definitely helped. I think having someone that passionate about what they're doing, teaching you what they know, makes a really big difference. Just having that passion behind it. So having teachers throughout college that were very into markets and everything like that certainly helped. Probably the biggest thing that got me most interested in a career in finance, I was my freshman year. So after I had quit soccer, was just trying to find my way. The semester started. I was brand new in school, wanted to meet people. And I was told to join my school's student run investment fund. We had around, I think, $500,000 in real money, and students were making all of the stock pitches, whether that was individual securities, ETFs, and everyone was invited to join. It wasn't necessarily some sort of hierarchy or you needed to apply to be included. We had around like 50, 60 kids at least, and it was just a really good way to meet people. So I decided to show up for the first meeting. Didn't understand most of what they were saying, but was really interested to learn more. Decided to stick with it, and I ended up loving it. So that was one of the biggest things that impacted me, I'd say, right when I started school. Then I knew that this is exactly what I wanted to do.
For sure. So this tournament, or I think you described it as like a bracket style tournament. Well, tell us a little bit about the tournament. How did you win this? What was involved?
So it was for my intro to finance class. I think it was the first semester of my second year of school, actually my first actual formal finance class. And we had been learning, all the terminology and, bond pricing calculations, things like that, pretty general finance knowledge that even if you don't have a career in it, it's good to know. Had been learning that all semester. And by the end, my professor's a big basketball player, big basketball fan. My school had D1 basketball as well, so just a big basketball school. And we decided to do a March Madness tournament at the end of every single semester that he taught for all of his classes. And it just took all of the students in class, lightning rounds of, I believe it was best of 3 questions. And you sat across from someone at a table and you each had a bell in front of you. The question came up on the board, and basically just whoever gave the right answer first won. So definitely very competitive, right up my alley. I got very into it. I had done really well in the class, and I think I had been ranked first in the class. So even if I hadn't have won, I think I was up there as a contender to get the exemption. Just it was like a point system or something. But I just really wanted to win, so I went pretty hard at it. It was really fun though. So that's like one of my favorite probably class memories that I have from college too. It was really, really fun.
Excellent. And you've always done well academically, I'm assuming.
I was always kind of got along really well with, not being pretty book smart and doing well with exams, which I mean, I know a lot of brilliant people that, aren't great test takers. I just got lucky that way that I was.
Yeah, for sure. Now you went to a Catholic college, correct? Or how was that experience?
I did, but the nice thing about, and I think there's like a misconception around, like Catholic or just religious universities generally, and I can't speak for other schools. St. Bonaventure was really, really cool in the fact that and I can say this legitimately, was not pushing any sort of agenda. And the reason for it being it was Catholic Franciscan, and the Franciscans are really, it's more like universal things that regardless of what your actual faith is, you can pretty much support. Like really, really big on volunteering. It was mostly just giving back to the community was kind of what, the whole Franciscan part of it was really about. So, I mean, we had a really diverse, group of students and everything like that. There wasn't really much like required religious coursework, anything like that. I know some other schools that have like church hours that you need to go to. I mean, all power to you if that's the school you want to go to, but we did not have any of that. So more just an emphasis on just generally being a good person and giving back as much as you can.
Yeah. Awesome. Great stuff. So tell us about your employer, DWS, and the type of role you have there.
Yeah, so DWS, it's ex-Deutsche Bank Asset Management, IPO'd a couple years back, 2018, one of the larger asset managers in the world, based in Germany. Have a pretty diverse product lineup with a lot of different asset managers. They may just kind of focus in on one asset class or maybe one or two specific products that they're good at, and that's all they sell. We have a really diverse lineup of ETFs and mutual funds. We have some direct real estate offerings as well, both for retail investors, just working with regular financial advisors that you and I know from, the internet, or if you have a financial advisor yourself, or working with institutional clients. So Fortune 100 companies, things like that. My job within the firm, I work in distribution. So you have the portfolio managers who manage our active mutual funds. They're making changes within the portfolios based on, the market and what's working and what isn't, what the portfolio strategy is, and kind of making decisions based on that. We have passive products, so our ETFs, and we have people who oversee all of that. I work in distribution, so my job is to get assets into those products. So I'm just front office sales, working with financial advisors, their analysts, some larger teams, and just kind of figuring out what solutions will work best for their clients, depending on, what the market's doing or how they manage their portfolio for clients, what their clients are looking for specifically. So kind of a lot of product knowledge needed, but it's definitely pretty relationship based as well. You have, your bigger clients that you work with really closely. Sometimes it's a little bit more transactional where people don't, they might need like a commodities fund or something, and you just might be one that popped up, but they don't necessarily want to be meeting with you, quarterly. So kind of a lot of different things going on, a lot of things thrown at you at once. I started out of college too, so a really good first job, kind of drinking through a fire hose for the first few months after licensing, but I kind of liked learning about things that way.
Yeah. So tell us about the process, how you got the job. Was it a rigorous thing? You said you got it right out of college. How did that come about?
A lot of networking. So I, in my school's student investment fund, we had some different like manager roles. And I had wanted to be a manager as early on as possible. I wanted the responsibility, but a lot of them were, they were just titles, but like, the general manager or, equity managers. And they were the people that generally were a little bit more, technically gifted or a little bit more senior. So usually people in MBA or, seniors. And at the end of my freshman year, the person who was our human resources manager and operations was graduating. And they planned our, annual trips to Chicago and New York City to visit alumni and kind of have, networking events, learn about different jobs. And I kind of jumped all over it when I knew that he was leaving. I started working with him a little more closely and just kind of put a bug in his ear that was something that I was interested in, something I'd be good at. So through the next 2 years of my degree before I graduated, I still had that role in the club. Turned out I was good at it. So just making kind of connections and setting meetings, everything like that. Made a lot of really good connections just by way of, talking to people when you're planning trips, and just we had like weekly calls with alumni to talk about what they do and different opportunities open for seniors and people looking for jobs. Met a lot of people, but made a few really good connections, one of whom he's a portfolio manager at my current firm. So he knew what I was looking for. We kept in touch over the years when I was still in school. Knew what I was looking for, knew I was a big relationship person. Just, he knew me pretty well. So pretty easy to tell once we're, connected if someone's good at that stuff. And there was an opening in December of my senior year. He was like, I can't make any promises. I'll connect you with someone, see how it goes, see if it's anything you're interested in. Ended up keeping in touch with the people at the firm that I had spoken with initially to learn about the role. By the time our spring trip to Chicago came around, I had, kept bugging them. I mean, tactfully bugging them like every few months or so, like, I'm still interested, is this still an opportunity? Got an interview set up when I was there in the spring, and then had my offer come in by graduation. So started off with, knowing the right people, but, persistence,
Yes.
I think probably played a part in that too.
For sure. I mean, great qualities, networking, persistence. JJ, I want to ask you, right? Because, Caityln, we're traders, I guess, well, our realms of the world, we're both in finance, but it's like a little bit different, right? And JJ, I want to ask you, right, with your dealings with, I don't know if you've known any guys from Deutsche Bank. I know you've probably known asset managers. I'm just curious to the differences maybe in like personalities or like lifestyles between, the guys you were with, traders and like asset managers.
Well, you got to remember, I lived in the days where we didn't have cell phone cameras, so we got away with a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see what it's like working in a large structured environment now, because I worked at a small brokerage firm. I never worked for one of the large banks. So Deutsche, I mean, it's not Deutsche, but it's, probably, what's the culture like there for you? How do you find it as a young person? Is it, because when you think of investment banking, you think that they're sort of more, stodgy guys with three-piece suits smoking pipes in the old days. What's it like now, in this century, and how are you finding that experience?
Yeah, I mean, investment banking, like pure investment banking, is definitely different than, what I do in my role and what my firm does. But culture-wise, I mean, it's great. It's a very open platform. You can walk up to like highest up managers that have their door
Cool.
open, and, non-COVID times again. But
Yeah.
everyone's very transparent, I could go up to any of the portfolio managers and just ask them any questions anytime, and they would probably, know who I am from being around the office. It's just very close knit. It's a
Nice.
big organization globally, but office wise, and, the people that you're interacting with like week to week, day to day, it feels a lot closer than knowing that there's like thousands of employees around the world too, which I think is really nice. I don't know if I'd assume that it's the same everywhere. I think some places are a little bit more rigid and, their structure and the way that you have to interact with people. But I think I got lucky to have a firm that is a little bit more, fluid and open.
That's really cool. Now you're in a sort of a sales capacity, right? So you're selling product. How is, see, I was in sales too before I became a trader. So how is the sales function now? I mean, in my day, it was, boozy luncheons, all of that sort of thing. What is the sales process like now in this day and age? I'm really curious to know.
Well, I'm sure there's definitely still, boozy lunches. So,
Oh,
um,
good.
yeah, so that some things never change. But I'm in an internal sales role, and my external wholesaler partner. So you kind of work one-on-one with someone else as like a team.
Oh,
And I
nice.
have a couple of different partners, and they live in the territory that they cover geographically. So, I have one that's in California, one that covers, the Chicago area. They live in that area. They don't come into the office like I do. And their job normally would just be to go to different advisors' offices, have meetings with the team, find solutions that fit, give updates with portfolio managers or client portfolio managers for products they already use,
Yeah.
and just be a value add in any way that you can. So sales right now is definitely interesting with COVID. So it's a little
Mhm.
bit more, my more senior partner that I work with, we're sort of doing the same job. Everyone's working from home. if we're doing meetings, it's over video. Most of us we're basically just going back to the days of, and my job consists of this anyways, but my partners that are usually out in the field are kind of going back to their days if they were an internal wholesaler before, just hitting the phones, dialing as much as
Dialing for
possible.
dollars.
Yeah,
Nice.
dialing. Yeah, dial till
Dialing
your
for
fingers
dollars.
bleed. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a 200 call a day guy, so I'm.
Oh boy.
Oh, I mean, I used to run a boiler room, so yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not quite as brutal these days,
No,
but
no, I
we have
know.
a couple people who have done that.
I know. Yeah, no, it's always good to close on the phone. That's always fun.
Oh yeah.
So did you guys, you said you guys are working from home. Did you have any periods when you guys were back into the office?
So I think a lot of, especially in Chicago, I do know there are a lot of different firms that are making different decisions on, if they're going to let people back in at all. My firm, at least as of now, is letting people go in if they want to, lower capacity, of course. But I mean, we just have everything spaced out. I haven't been to the office since March. I was a person that thought I would hate working from home, and I love it. So, I'd be happy to never go back, honestly, if I'm like taking calls from my couch and don't have to dress up and don't have to commute. So it's kind of a blessing. The only one good thing of, obviously a pretty rough year, all things considered, that is something that I've liked, but we do have people in the office.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, it's funny. I was telling JJ this today. I'm in Florida, and people act like coronavirus doesn't exist here. Like it's it's funny. Like it doesn't exist in Florida. That's what I tell people. So I assume, like, I know they're taking it more serious there. JJ, seems like most other places they are, but
yeah, they are. And we're not going to let anybody know that she's doing client calls from the couch. Okay.
Yeah, keep that on the.
Yeah, we'll keep that on the key.
Yeah, working from home is great. No, I love it. I mean, it gets a little I guess monotonous, but we're talking with people throughout the day, so I guess that helps with it. So Caityln, as far as the pandemic's effect just on asset management in general, how would you say like this whole time period's been?
It's been really interesting, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed in terms of, activity and, what's going on. At the beginning, it was really crazy. We had days where our managers would tell us probably not to call anyone, just when the market was, tanking and way up. And then just like in, like March, April, when things were really, really crazy. Not that they haven't been crazy at all for the rest of the year. They just kind of said, I know that this is your job, but right now it's probably not the best idea to, be calling and bugging a bunch of people, just because we're working with retail advisors, right? So the, education level in terms of what their clients know about the markets is it's very wide. Like you get a lot of people that might understand a lot of things and you can have sophisticated conversations, but there are some people that know nothing, which is fine. I mean, their advisors, doing all of these things for them, but there's still going to be a lot of concerns. So when the market was going haywire more towards the beginning of the year, those advisors were getting absolutely slammed with calls. We had some clients that told us that they weren't. I think it just depends on your clientele, but for a lot of people, it was a pretty tough time. So activity on our end was kind of lulled for a while, more towards the middle of the year when people were more used to working at home and kind of getting back into like a new normal, as people say. I don't love that, but a different, way of working and interacting with people. There's still money moving this entire year. It's just kind of finding the right people that are, looking for our guidance or our solutions that would be a good fit. Especially towards, end of the year, it's gotten a little bit more normalized since after the election. There's a lot of money moving, especially people making year-end changes. So, I mean, there's always something to kind of go after, something to call on, different firms that are putting out different thought leadership on asset classes and everything. So it kind of, the business sort of drives us in certain directions, but there's always still, something to be calling on, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. As far as, I just think back on some of our conversations with, past people or, things I've read, that it's just as important as like managing the clients, right? As far as, I'm sure you could have some clients that are just very like always calling you, what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. Some who are hands off. I assume you guys are kind of like trained on how to handle different types of clients.
Yeah, and it's just like dealing with people normally. There are just so many different personalities. So, I mean, after you've gotten a chance to interact with them once or twice before, even if I'm, making dials throughout the day, you can get a tone pretty quickly for if the person wants to talk to you or not, the type of person that, are they quick to the point? Do they want you to kind of hold their hand and walk you through things a little bit more? You get a lot of like emotional IQ, I guess, almost from a type of job like this where you're interacting with people like that and getting such varied personalities. I don't I don't want to say luckily, I guess, but I don't really work with their end clients at all,
Yeah.
who I would say typically would be the ones that if you're having, bad times in the markets or anything would be a little bit more kind of skittish and freaking out, asking lots of questions. We definitely get, I mean, a lot of our role is sort of supporting like thought leadership and giving our advice in difficult times. Advisors want to hear different viewpoints and what asset managers and their research teams have come up with, because it's definitely varied from firm to firm. So there is a lot of, people still coming to us and asking us what we think, but it's just not in the same way that you would see like a retail client going to their advisor, at least normally.
Right, for sure. So are there any like regulation or rules for yourself in trading your own account? Is there stipulations around that?
So there is, and to be honest with you, so I want to trade like my own account and I just haven't yet. COVID's felt like 3 years. I probably should have, figured it out in this time period. It would have been, a good use of time. But when I started my job, I, just wanted to get my job figured out. And I was like, oh, I can trade my own stuff a little bit later on. I can always start on that. There's definitely rules around it. I don't know. I still need to look into it. I haven't talked with like my compliance team or anything. I haven't even gotten that far, but there is rules around getting trades approved ahead of time, but I don't know for sure if it's just specific to my firm's products. Because I do know that some of my partners that I've worked with, will invest money in our products that they have conviction around, but you have to get it approved before you place the trade, because you can't, front running clients and everything like that. So just taking precautions around it.
Oh, for sure. JJ, how prevalent do you think front running is? Well, at least in your day, at least.
Oh God, I used to front run everybody, but that's why the guys next to me would have to take phone calls under the desk. But here's the thing now: the compliance environment. My God, it must be. What is the compliance environment? I mean, we used to bribe our compliance officer, so that's the way it used to work in my day. Now things are completely different, and everything is very, very above board, right? And if anybody at Deutsche Bank is listening to this, please, we're trying to behave ourselves. We really are. And this nothing badly on poor Caityln. But what's it like now with having a compliance team as opposed to just one cat that used to come by and give you a heck every once in a while?
Well, I luckily I wasn't working at any point before. I'm like 22. I haven't been working at any point before they had like these more strict regulations. I mean, I've heard about it obviously, but it's just, you have to be very, very careful. Everything gets a second screen. You have to have, especially it's difficult now too in COVID, just with us being, a sales team and outreach, and we're trying to just have as much activity as possible. And you can only do so much of that on the phone. There's a lot of sending emails, sending reports and everything like that. And it just all needs to be compliance approved beforehand. And I'm sure this is the same issue at many different firms, but just the process and getting things approved is very slow. So you can't really run with big ideas that you get on the fly necessarily, because you could have, language in your email that's too promissory, or you could have data points that you didn't support with like approved marketing material, things like that. So you just need to be really careful about what you're putting out. And there's definitely eyes on you at all times, which is probably for the best, but clearly for like end clients and everything, but just in the process and in the flow of like your work day, I think it kind of puts a wrench in things at times.
I can imagine, but I guess working at such a large institution and with the varied amount of product that you have, and the deal flow that place gets. So I'm sure that, the learning opportunity for you there is just staggering. I mean, the whole thing, learning how to navigate compliance and clients And retail, I mean, come on, retail is not easy. Okay, it's I
Hmm.
mean, institutional at wholesale. Those guys, they're playing with OPM, so it's they're a little more faster and looser with it. And
Hmm.
but retail, you're dealing with people with who have mom and pops who are investors, right? And so that must be quite challenging, I would imagine.
It
Um,
is. I like it though. I think,
yeah.
and that was part of the reason I was so drawn to a role like this right out of school. You're just getting exposure to so many different parts of the industry, which for me, trying to decide what I'd want to do um, in the long run was really helpful. And you learn so much from, working with advisors that have different types of clients. They run their books completely different ways.
Mhm.
And you're working with so many different personalities. You have experience in sales and relationship management, which is important no matter what you do. You're working with portfolio managers on our side, and they're analysts on their teams, and you're working with, again, compliance like you said.
Mhm.
It's just a very broad exposure to everything. So I mean, I've been mostly, there are things that I find annoying in my day, which I mean, I'm sure everyone does, but for the most part, I mean, I'm just thankful to have had, access to be learning about these things so early on, even the compliance stuff, because that's never going to go away. So that's always good
Exactly.
to get exposure to early on, I think.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so Caitlin, you were talking about like the long run. So career wise, well, what type of aspirations do you have?
I have many. Would wish I could narrow them down, but so I do love, the relationship side of things. Sales is an absolute grind. Don't let anyone tell you differently. They might not have good experiences with people in my role, but people can respect that it's very difficult to be in a job that's, product pushing and on the phones all day. So I definitely appreciate, the experience I've had in that starting out. It's kind of humbling in a sense. I am more of a in the weeds, really want to dig into the details of things. I'm working on my CFA as well. I'm a level 2 candidate, I guess, for the May exam next year. So working and positioning myself a little bit more towards, the portfolio management side of things, a little bit more technical, just because that is something that I think you miss out on at least a little bit being in more of a sales role. You don't necessarily have those more difficult, sophisticated conversations all day. They happen from time to time, but it's not with any sort of consistency. And getting exposure to the portfolio management team and client portfolio managers that I worked with, I definitely would like to do something a little bit more hands-on, maybe like a sort of allocator role way down the road. I know a bunch of great people from Twitter that, are allocators in the institutional world, which I think is really interesting. I think that research could be, in any sort of research role would be really cool too, which is totally opposite of what I'm doing now. But,
Mhm.
the nice thing of any role that you have, even if it's not something you want to do, down the road, is that you figure out it puts you in a better direction for what you hope to do eventually. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. JJ, I want to ask you something I was thinking on as far as the risk side between, asset management and trading. I would assume because asset management, I think it's definitely a more conservative approach from what I gather. The type of like drawdowns or the type of maybe like the psychological aspect that goes into it, JJ. Do you think there's much difference, or would you speak to that?
Well, it's time frame too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these people are putting, we always call them the other time frame, and they're putting together strategies for people for 20, 30 years, so they can ride out those, those fluctuations in the market. So that's the one thing. I mean, what we're doing is, we trade on the day time frame, so we're always, everything's about inventory moving back and forth. But these guys, portfolio management, I've always found just fascinating in asset management because I'm, for me, a long-term position is 20 minutes. It's like playing hot potato. I gotta get it out of my hands, right? Just and I'm a trader, and so I find it. We had Shayna on the show, and she's a
mhm.
CIO, and it was just fascinating. How they have to manage portfolio managers, and then you were talking about allocation and allocators and stuff like that. Could you maybe talk a little bit about allocation and stuff, and just because some of our folks don't really get insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, more surface level, keep it simple. I mean, there's so much of a difference, I guess, between what you guys do day to day, which I think is really interesting and I want to learn more about. So keep listening to your podcast. I mean, like you were saying, the timelines on it are just so different. And there's even big differences in between, the clients that I'm working with in retail, like the regular mom and pops, and even between that and institutional, pensions, endowments, foundations, things like that.
Mhm.
They have timelines that are just not really fathomable for, the average day person. It's more like into perpetuity almost sometimes. I mean,
Exactly.
probably, the people I know that are allocators, on the institutional side might not agree verbatim with me, but much different timelines. They can get into a little bit more sophisticated things typically. I mean, you see there are vehicles for getting into, like private equities and hedge funds for regular advisors, but it's not something that's as typical. Um, if you're looking between, the clients that I'm dealing with every day, it's more going to be, individual stocks like that you guys might trade, or mutual funds, ETFs, like vehicles that are a little bit more simplified or cost efficient. It's just easier to kind of fit, you know, the money that you're putting into different buckets to diversify through those vehicles. And then, institutional asset managers or that have giant chunks of money, much bigger than a lot of, advisors or advisor teams ever get to have. And they're managing that, and they don't need that money necessarily at one point in the future, usually. And it's going to be much further out. So they can take a little bit more risk in a higher percentage of their portfolio. And again, this is just all my understanding, but they can get into some really interesting things. Going back, private equity and hedge funds. I don't have, any clients that are really asking me for any of that, because the average day investor is not going to be necessarily looking for that, and it's not something that would fit kind of like their risk profile or their timelines
Mhm.
usually. So even within, I mean, there's a lot of differences between asset management and like trading day to day, having a 20-minute position versus a 20-year one.
Oh yeah.
But it just goes to show, I mean, there's just so much diversity, I guess, within the space for how people
Yeah.
do what they do in investing as a whole. So I think it's super interesting. I'm still learning a ton about it, but that was, my impression from working for, I don't know, 15 months now or something like that,
Oh,
somewhere
that's
around
cool.
there.
No, it's great getting somebody's perspective, in this day and age right off the get go. It's good stuff.
JJ, what type of stop do you put for a 20-year position?
For me, oh my God.
Yeah, well, what
You
type
know,
of
the
stop would we put it? Is there even a stop?
well, here's the thing. I always tell people ask me, do you trade stocks? And I go, I have a trouble trading something unless I'm actually manipulating the whole damn thing. If unless I got the whole float, in my desk drawer, I just don't feel comfortable. So I like to sleep at night. But yeah, yeah, definitely. I was also from Vancouver too, which is it's if you hold something for more than 20 minutes, you're holding it forever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so Caityln, a former podcast guest of ours, Shayna, you guys have a really good relationship. So speak to how that came about.
I met her through Twitter too, so I guess that's how I
Oh,
make all of my friends. But she's great. So when I was going to move to Chicago, and I had already been a little bit on finance Twitter, met a few people, um, some people out of New York City and everything like that that had connections in Chicago. I had tweeted out, "Oh, where's the Chicago FinTwit community at? Did I miss them?" Like, because I didn't know anyone from that space, and it just absolutely blew up. I had probably like 50 people reply back to that. Like, "I'm right here. Nice to meet you. When are you moving here? Like, we'll have an event when you move out and you can meet a bunch of people," which we ended up doing. And it was so much fun. Shayna was one of them. And she had ended up messaging me on the side. She showed up to one of the Chicago like finance Twitter events that we had done prior to COVID, I believe, a couple months after I'd moved to Chicago. So in the fall of 2019. Had really liked her, talked to her a bit, and we had talked, on Twitter multiple times before that. So it was just nice to put, a face and a voice to the name and then Twitter at. And she had actually, so Thanksgiving was the next month. And since I had more recently moved to Chicago, I wasn't going to head back to New York, where I'm from, for Thanksgiving. And she had messaged me and actually invited me to her home, which is one of the nicest things that anyone, I've met her one time. It was one of the nicest things that I could have asked for, and such a nice gesture. So I actually ended up going to her house for Thanksgiving with her husband, or her son, Gabe, who I love Gabe. I've babysat him now since. He's a great kid. And one of their family friends too. So just came about through Twitter, but it ended up being a lot more than that. She's a good mentor and friend of mine now as well.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. That's a great mentor to have. Shout out to Shayna. Really just love her story, and just her resiliency. Just really tough as nails, and I just really appreciate that about her. Yeah, so great mentor you got there. All right, so now's my favorite part of the podcast. We got done with like all like the technical talk, et cetera, et cetera. Got some just miscellaneous type questions. You mentioned, Caityln, you're from New York. Now I think you're from like a smaller town in New York, correct? Now you're living in the Windy City. So what's that like? What's the differences?
Well, so my hometown, I graduated 50 kids in high school. Population of my town itself, my school was like 2 or 3 towns combined. Maybe population of 1,000 in my hometown. We have one stoplight. There's like a 7-Eleven and a bar on Main Street, and that's like the only thing there.
Wow.
The closest mall is like 45 minutes away. The closest airport's over an hour. It's interesting. But I always knew that I was going to be a city person. I mean, I did a ton of traveling from sports and just traveling with my family growing up. Had been to a lot of cities, had been to New York, and I just felt like it was somewhere that I would much rather be. I loved where I grew up for growing up. It's a super safe place, and you can do a lot of really fun things. And so that was good, but I knew I wasn't going to stay. I knew it for as long back as you could know that, you wanted to move out of somewhere. Good to visit, but Chicago, I had been here for like my school trips that I mentioned 3 times, and I fell in love with it. So when I started looking for jobs, I think I looked in, I applied pretty much everywhere. I was an absolutely psychotic about applying for jobs, and it was just unbelievable. I was every day. I had spreadsheets, and it was probably a little overkill, but I looked pretty much everywhere around the country. Chicago and New York City were the 2 biggest places that I looked at though. So when I got my offer for the firm I'm at now, I had an offer in New York City as well, but I just fell in love with Chicago so much that they were pretty comparable offers too, but I just knew that I had to go with this one. So it's been really good. COVID, we've been in COVID for a lot of the time that I've been here, and I still love it, which I think says a lot. But it's a really fun place, very underrated. The winters aren't great, but I'm from upstate New York, so I have nothing bad to say about it. People just don't like the cold, so it might not be the place for them, but I'm okay with it. Just get a good coat.
Yeah, it's got a good coat.
Yeah.
I'm a little mixed about it. Like I miss, and JJ, you're gonna laugh because you know me. I miss the winter clothing. No, I do. You can get fresh with some like winter clothing items.
You can. Fall and winter. It's my favorite for like finding clothes to wear and everything. So I'm with you.
So I gotta enjoy now. Like it's funny because everyone's like getting all bundled up now in like the northern regions. This is like the best time of like year for Florida. Like it's like 70s, 60s. You might dip a little bit lower. So I could get to throw on a little hoodie once in a while, but that's about it. I can't get JJ. I can't bring myself to throw away some of my winter clothing. I still have it after like almost a decade down here. I can't.
There's always something nice about a cashmere overcoat and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I love New York. The New York cold, that's perfect, right?
Yeah,
New
York cold's good. Yeah.
Where I live now, good God, it's like Siberia is like a vacation. Above North Dakota right now in Canada. So
yeah, you guys see Goldman is moving to Miami, I believe, right?
I didn't know if they actually decided where it was. Is it Miami?
I assumed it was Miami. I don't know. I think so.
There's been some headlines that Goldman's moving to Miami, so I guess they'll be.
I saw Southern Florida. That's awesome though. Good for them.
Well,
no kidding.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if that's like starts like a movement. They got like a few people down here already, like West Palm, Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
So yeah, I love it down here. I love it. It's nice. All right. So you mentioned you traveled a decent bit. Any place that really sticks out?
Probably my favorite place I've ever been was Croatia. My brother studied abroad in Scotland for a year for his master's degree. So I went out and visited, and we went to, actually, this was just a great trip, but he lived in Edinburgh in Scotland, which was just a really fun city too. And then we went to Budapest, which was unbelievable. If you're like an architecture person, it was just crazy to see some of the things that they had there. And then we went all over the place, basically in Croatia, which was, I mean, a lot of people haven't been there, but I mean, who are big travelers, it's just a little bit off the beaten path for a lot of places you'd go in Europe, but it was unbelievably beautiful and very cheap to get around. And just everything was so picturesque. The people were so nice. And I want to go back, but I've been trying not to think about the whole, where I'd like to travel while we're stuck in my tiny apartment, but
Yeah.
thoughts for another day.
Yes. JJ's a little familiar with Croatian culture.
Yeah, kind of.
A little too familiar.
Oh yeah, no. Yes, I used to be married into it, but not anymore. But yeah, no, yeah, I'm very familiar with Croatian culture.
That's for the Love and Trading podcast. We'll save that for that one. All right, let's see what's up. Okay, so you got a hobby around cocktail making. I know when we were on stream together, they were mentioning you get searching for maybe a publisher for a book or something. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so since COVID started, some people took up healthy habits, exercising every day, reading more books. And mine was filling up the very large bar I have in my small apartment with a bunch of fun things and figuring out, drinks that I can make with them. And my roommate certainly appreciates that too. So started making a whole bunch of cocktails. I mean, I had done it a little bit before COVID too, but I think this just sped it up a little bit, being stuck at home and not that many things to do. So experimented a lot with a bunch of different things that I hadn't tried before, got a little bit more used to recipes and how things would normally be made if you were like in a bar or anything. I was more used to, in college, like, oh, I'll have a rum and Coke or a vodka cranberry, just like the really easy things that, college kids would be more used to.
You're allowed to drink at Catholic college? What?
Oh, yeah.
That's permitted?
It is. It's actually encouraged. Well, not by some people, but so I started doing a bunch of cocktails. I started taking pictures of them and I did like hashtag drink of the day. I put it on my Twitter all the time now just because I was just sort of messing around with different things that might be good. If they ended up being good, I would share them with people. They tell me to share the recipes with them. So it sort of started that way. It's sped up into a little bit more than that. Kind of have my own recipes and things that have come about that are my favorites, aside from some more like traditional ones. The book that we were talking about on the Stock Twits live stream for the charity event, I mean, I've been making a bunch of drinks and then, more typical recipes and then the ones I've made myself. I wanted to put it into a book, but I wanted it to be not just like a normal cocktail book, a little bit more tilted towards the like finance Twitter audience that I have. Name the drinks after very like punny finance terms or different historical events, different people, but also do, like a more educational sort of write up on, the history of whatever that term was or what it means, and give a little bit more color around it. So it's just an idea. I've talked to the publisher, fortunately, to kind of learn a little bit more about the process because I, obviously haven't published a book before and there's a lot that goes into it. So still more in, like the thought process stages, but it's an idea I'm, excited about and hopefully we'll go through it. I'll send you a copy of it. Gets that far.
Yes, please do. Please do. What's a favorite cocktail if you have one?
I'm a big, just anything vodka. I'm a big vodka fan. I like to stick with the pretty simple stuff. I make a lot of cosmopolitan, so literally just like cranberry juice, lime, vodka, and like triple sec. So super easy. What else? I like a lot of flavored vodkas. Those are always good. My fallback is like a gin and tonic if I were ever out somewhere. That's something that I get a lot. There are a lot more, complicated recipes that I work on now. I have a huge sweet tooth, so pretty much anything that's like sugary and probably bad for you is, one of the first places that I'd start.
Yeah. I just take mine straight now. Like I don't know. I can't do the sugar, the sweet too much. I need you guys to clarify this for me because I'm not sure, because I've had someone tell me, right, and I stopped drinking vodka because of this, right? I get a little bit more on edge at times if I'm drinking vodka. Like, so if someone says like a sideways comment, I might be, more apt to a little more. So I just stick to dark now, which I do. I like whiskey anyway. Is that a true or a false statement? I don't know.
I don't know if there's like science behind that. I kind of feel like that's true if I drink like different liquors or wine. I feel like I definitely have like different moods with that too. So I kind of think that it's true, but I actually was reading recently. I didn't read enough into it, obviously, to give more color on it, as you can tell right now. But I was reading like an article the other day, and it was saying that that's just entirely false. But I'm kind of holding out hope. I really don't think that it can be entirely a lie, just from my experience and yours. I don't think it's a coincidence, but
Yeah.
Well,
I'm no
I don't know.
scientist.
Definitely from my bouncer days, there are definitely things that you see people drinking. They go a little snaky,
Yeah.
Like if they're drinking a little too much Jack Daniels on, straight, they get a little, that's just for breaking up fights, and Uzo too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because I've been thinking, yeah, like I don't know, because I do like vodka, I enjoy vodka, but I've been steering away a little bit from it, but we'll see. You mentioned about people taking up good hobbies during COVID, and a good part for me. I mean, I've always liked reading, but I really just read even more. You come across as someone who probably enjoys reading. What have you been reading lately?
I do. So ones I've recently read, books from my friend Brian Portnoy and Josh Brown, you're familiar. They just let out a book called How I Invest My Money, which a lot of people have been buying up and kind of tweeting about and everything. It's just talking to different people in the finance industry about how they personally manage their own money, what they invested in, what they put the most value in, and kind of what their philosophy is on investing. So that was an interesting read. Morgan Housel's Psychology of Money. Bought a copy of that as soon as it came out. I'm a huge fan of his, so that's an incredible book. Apparently, there's trying to make it into a screenplay. Very curious on how they would make that happen. I don't know, but I'd love to see it happen. I'm a big into audiobooks too. I just think it's easier. I think I got into it like commuting to work and whatnot, just listening to it on the train. I'm listening to The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton. I just started that. And then another good one a while back towards beginning of quarantine that took me forever to finish because it's the longest audiobook I've ever heard of in my life was the Steve Jobs biography, which was really, it was so interesting. He was a really interesting guy. So it was really, really long, but totally worth it. So lots of things you didn't know before.
Nice. Do you other than like finance related topics, do you have a favorite genre of reading?
I don't know if I really have read enough of like one specific genre to say. So no, but I'm a big like F. Scott Fitzgerald fan. So like he's written a lot of really good books, short stories. So I love reading those. These days it's more so investing books though, really, or like finance. If I know someone that wrote one or, one that I know is popular, I'll read that. But I feel like I've kind of gotten off of the reading bandwagon in the past few months of quarantine. I went pretty hard at it in the beginning, just not having things to do. So need to get back to that.
Yeah, for sure. And I like how you just like dropped like, oh yeah, my friend Josh Brown. I
don't know Josh, but I know Brian.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Throw that out there.
Okay.
How do you manage working full time, studying for your CFA, and actually having any time for yourself? I mean, that CFA must be that's a real barn burner. That's tough.
It is. They don't really balance out. It's a lot. Work's been pretty busy, so it's a lot of work. And then, CFA. So I'm taking it in May and just started studying like a couple weeks back. And it's supposed to be. When I studied for level 1, I was still in college, so it was easier because you're so used to having your day segmented for like classes. So I just put in my schedule like a class. And I was so much more used to doing that then. But now that I'm working, it's a lot more, I got holed up on work for an extra like hour and a half today, or I need to get something done on a weekend that I didn't finish for work or something. And it just chews up a lot of time. And then, during COVID, you want to see a lot of your friends because it's just mental health wise, get out and see people or talk to people and take the time. So the CFA stuff is, I need to probably hardwire that into my schedule a little bit better. It's not been going well. So it's just a little bit more waking up a little bit earlier and going to bed a little bit later and being more productive with your time. Like, it's always doable, but it's just like a grin and bear it and figure it out thing. It's a little painful sometimes.
I was just wondering because I've not, never come close to those kind of exams. So it's just, that must be quite something.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah.
How's the situation in like Chicago? Are you guys like, because I know certain places are like re-shutting back down. Is that happening by you guys, or is there talks of it?
It is. So I was at home in New York for Thanksgiving and came back probably a week or two ago. I can't even remember now, but they had shut down. They had basically shut down the city again. Restaurants, I don't know if you can eat inside anymore. I think it's just outdoors, which, I mean, it's pretty cold out here, so feels like a lot more shut down. We had bars open until like 3 a.m. at one point during all of this. Like, we got to the point that our case numbers were so good that we opened up quite a bit, that you could have a pretty high capacity inside at restaurants. Like, gyms and everything were open. I think the gyms still are, but a lot of like the dining and drinking, like, it's not flying anymore. So they've definitely shut down more since end of November, early December.
Yeah. It's just crazy to me. Like, JJ, I was telling you this, like the clubs here, the bars are like jam packed. Like the club was like shoulder to shoulder.
And nobody's wearing a mask.
Nobody's wearing a mask. Yeah. That's what I said. It doesn't exist down here. It's
Wow.
But crazy. JJ, any more questions?
Oh, let's see. I was just no, it's just really great to have somebody on the show that is starting off in this industry, and it's nice to get that perspective because it's so long since I've worked in the industry that and it's changed so much. And I never really worked at a larger institution, and Deutsche is the largest German bank, so and even though it's spun off, it's a great perspective to see someone young working and really really reaching for it. It's great reaching for that brass ring. It's really, really cool, and it's wonderful having you on the show. Definitely.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Make my big finance podcast debut, so thank you for that.
That's good. We want to inspire young people in finance and get more people into it.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely.
And so that's going to conclude today's episode of Confessions of a Market Maker. If you guys enjoyed the show, please rate and review it for us. If you'd like to learn market auction theory, market profile, trade futures, trade equities, and/or options, join JJ and I at microefutures.com. Caityln, tell people where they can find you and anything else you want them to know.
You can find me on Twitter at Dead Kate Bounce.
Dead Kate Bounce. All right.
Yes.
Anything else for them? That's it.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know. Follow her. She's a good follow on Twitter. Both, entertaining, and you get some, educational anecdotes from time to time. Caityln, appreciate it. Yeah, you got a good skill set. You got a good mentor. The future's looking bright. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
All right. And so for Caityln Cook, I'm Paulie Walnuts. He's the gorilla of House Street. You stops though.